Hello, everyone from Manila, Philippines. Is my audio okay?
Perfect.
Okay, thank you.
And
So
mine
my name
too.
is Albiento. I'm a co-leader at EvalYouth Asia. Together with me in this presentation is Miss Anindita Sharma. She's the regional director for Asia Pacific at the ROI Institute. And we are members of the Using Evaluation to Report on the SDGs thematic group at the Asia Pacific Evaluation Association. Our group is under the 8 themes of the Asia Pacific Regional Evaluation Strategy, which aims to promote the use of evidence when reporting on SDGs in voluntary national reviews or VNRs. So today, we will be presenting the key findings of a study we undertook in 2022 and 2023 to determine the status of M&E practices on SDGs in selected countries in the Asia Pacific region. My apologies in advance if I'll be coughing throughout my presentation. Before we present our research, let's take a moment to check your knowledge on the status of progress towards achieving the SDGs in Asia Pacific. Could you please launch our first poll question? Okay. Do we have it? Do we have it as a Zoom poll? Okay. So, at the current rate of progress in SDGs in our region, what percent do you think of the targets will be missed by 2030 based on the 2023 SCUP report? I'll give you 30 seconds to answer. Is it A, 50%, B, 75%, or C, 90%? What do you think?
Yes, so the responses are coming in May. So let's give it a
Couple
while.
more seconds.
Yes, yes. Okay, so can we end the poll here and see the result?
Sure, let's see. Let's see it.
Okay. So the majority of the participants have said that it's 75%, but then there are equal proportion of participants who are between voting for 50% and 90%. So Dorothy, would you like to reveal the right answer?
Yes, please. Can you please click on the presentation so we can see the correct answer?
Okay. Okay, so the correct answer, I actually let me tell you. The correct answer is 90%.
Yes,
And
exactly.
yes,
In
yes.
the 2023 report, SCAP actually estimated that the region will miss 90% of
Mm-hmm.
the 118 measurable targets by 2030 unless efforts will be multiplied. And according to the latest SCAP Asia and the Pacific SDG Progress Report released only last February 15th, the region will likely not meet any of the 17 SDGs by the agreed deadline. What do you think about this? The picture we're currently seeing based on the report looks grim, isn't it?
Yes.
Next slide, please. Okay. So monitoring the progress of SDGs implementation is not an easy feat and quite challenging, as the SCAP report has noted. But as Ada has mentioned earlier, this is an important puzzle piece in accelerating the progress towards the SDGs by allowing for better decision making and action to achieve the goals. Our thematic group initiated this research mainly because we were interested in understanding the M&E component of the SDGs and how it impacts the acceleration of progress towards achieving the goals. So for this study, we focused on the following 3 areas. First, the institutional frameworks in place for monitoring and evaluating the progress on the SDGs. Second, the actual practice of monitoring and evaluating the SDGs implementation. And third, the gaps seen and the support needed by countries to bolster the tracking of progress on the SDGs. Next slide, please. So for this study, we used quantitative and qualitative data collection tools, but primarily an online survey and a desk review to collect data on the situation gaps and support needed to monitor and evaluate progress on the SDGs. We targeted representatives of national government agencies, but also VOPES and the academia who work with or are knowledgeable on SDGs monitoring and implementation in countries in the Asia Pacific. A total of 14 respondents from 11 countries participated in the survey, and more than half of them were government officials, while the rest were VOPE representatives and representatives from the academe and CSOs. We also did a review of relevant literature and SDGs, including the VNRs of the 11 countries who answered the survey to supplement and complement the result of our study. But just a caveat on the limitations of our study, since we only received responses from 11 countries across the region, which is a vast region, the findings may not be representative of the experiences of the region in terms of monitoring and evaluating SDGs implementation. But nonetheless, we still do see the need, the value of highlighting the experience of the countries who were part of this study as a starting point for discussion around the importance of understanding what goes behind the tracking of progress on the SDGs and see where there might be gaps and how these can be addressed collaboratively between and among various stakeholders. Next slide. So our first finding shows that there is a commitment among respondent countries, as it should be, towards achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals, but that they are adapted uniquely in every country. In particular, all the 11 countries have established institutions and processes for the monitoring and evaluation of general public policies and programs. But when it comes to institutional frameworks on the M&E of the SDGs, 5 of the 11 countries mentioned having specific policy frameworks on monitoring and evaluating the SDGs. The specific paths chosen by each country vary greatly, as you can see on the table. Some have policies such as in the Philippines, for example, while others have laws on this, like in Mongolia. Our survey findings also showed that the conduct of M&E on SDGs varied in frequency. More countries reported doing regular monitoring, which was usually on an annual and semi-annual basis, compared to evaluations, which were done sometimes ad hoc. Over to my colleague, Anindita, for the next findings.
All right, thank you, May. Just want to make sure if you can hear me properly, just give me a quick thumbs up, please. Okay, so let me take over from here. So far, we saw that the first finding of our study is that every country took its own path, as it's very much allowed in how SG is interpreted in our countries globally. But the second finding also showed something which, while unexpected, is very interesting to us. And that is that as countries go on the path of implementing the Sustainable Development Goals, there seems to be a learning path. Now, that is not surprising because even yesterday we saw many examples of just measurement, evaluation, learning over time and building on its past successes. So we see that. On this slide, I want to point to two or three different things. To the left of this slide, there is a table. And that is a table which shows for the 11 countries that participated in our survey, how many VNRs they had submitted as of December of 2022. The number is about 1 for Kyrgyz Republic and Mongolia at the time. And then also the maximum being 3, and that's the Philippines and Indonesia. Now, when we did our survey, one of the questions were related to the perception of robustness of how SDG monitoring policies are in their country. Interestingly, the countries with 3 VNRs indicated a perception of greater robustness of these policies because they had built every year on it. And then more specifically, maybe we can look at a few examples. And here we have pulled out simple examples from Bhutan, Japan, and India. So in Bhutan's second VNR 2021, they talked about the DEVA platform, which is an integrated platform to see indicators of GNH and SDGs and their 5-year plans. I'm mentioning specifically that that's been helping them not only raise awareness, but also increase adoption and data availability for the SDGs. In case of Japan's second VNR, also 2021, they brought up an idea of the SDGs promotion roundtable. Now, this is very interesting because this is in recognition of multi-stakeholder engagement that is necessary and bringing in the voices of how others are perceiving, not just the government, but also how others are perceiving progress along the Sustainable Development Goals. And also in India, between the first and the second VNR, we noticed an approach to the whole of society, bringing in multi-level engagement, civil society, local communities, government at local and subnational levels. So in all, we find that as countries go through the process, they learn. And it kind of reminded me yesterday, just listening to, I think, Mr. Tsunayama's talk, where he said, first we developed the habit, and then now we are focusing on quality. And it seems we are on the path, although it is slow and it is very, very painful. Now, the third finding of our short study related to the gaps and challenges. But before we go there, I'd like to move to the next slide and ask, I believe that would be a poll question as well. And our question is with regards to data, because this is a huge gap. And the question is, how many of the 169 targets do you think we have insufficient data for in the Asia Pacific? 25, 51, or 83?
So Anindita, I see that majority of our participants are, inclining towards 83, but then the data is changing. The vote is changing. Okay. Let's see how it goes.
Okay. Let's see how it goes. Well, we're not feeling very optimistic here, it seems. How is it looking, Rajani?
Okay, so almost 50% of our participants have already voted. So I'd like to end the poll over here and share the result with you. So there's a tie between 51 and 83, the option number B and C.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Okay. We are a pessimistic bunch. Actually, the answer is B, 51. And while 83 makes 51 look very good, the truth is 51 is not very, very good at all. Yeah, and the latest SCAP report, which was published a week after we put this together, basically showed a third of our indicators actually have no data whatsoever. That is a challenge. But if we move on to the next slide, specifically talking about what people said and what we picked out, beyond data, there are other issues. And these are issues that relate to mainstreaming. Could you please move to the next slide? I'll just give it a second. Maybe there's a lag. While that slide is coming up, maybe just one comment on data. One thing that came up yesterday was data is something also which responds to demand. Yet we don't have it, but we have to start building it. And there was a wonderful example yesterday that I think Mr. Sakamoto's presentation brought out, perhaps inadvertently, or which was really about the ex-ante, ex-post evaluation and how the demand creates the need and the supply of data as well. So data is painful, but we have to begin and we have to keep going. Now back to our slide. Over and above this big issue of data is the fact that we just don't have the experience as people, as countries, as units to put together good evaluations for SDGs. And also there are challenges in coordination and mainstreaming. In all, when asked about what support was needed, a couple of things emerged. One is the fact that our national evaluation policies should be strengthened further and SDGs incorporated in those. The second is a really strong call for capacity building. We need to learn more, see more, share more. And with that, we put together some very simple conclusions and recommendations, which I'll point to on the next slide. If we could go to the next slide, please. So as it's coming up, our findings are every country, when it comes to implementing the SDGs and its M&E, has its unique path. They're learning through it. The progress is slow, and there are plenty of challenges. A lot of capacity building is required. And so what we had recommended in our study is many more platforms such as these, talking, sharing about SDG, its implementation, its M&E. Also, collaboration and coordination among stakeholders within countries and levels of governments and other stakeholders such as the private sector, CSOs, etc., is very important. Now, we have a task to change and cover some of our gaps, but since time is running out, I have a question for all of you. We will hope to do this again. We would hope to do this study again. We definitely want your involvement. So please do respond to us and help us learn more about it. But the biggest question perhaps from us to all of you is in your capacity and given the urgency of sustainability agenda in general, what is something you can do? And that would be our question to you as we consider this situation. What can you do in your roles?
Anindita, this is really important question, and could we just like give it a minute so that maybe our participant could give their opinion in chat box. It'll be very interesting to know, right? So
We would love to.
yeah. So could you all please just give your thoughts on it, and it will be very interesting to read your opinion and share among ourselves. So yeah, please go ahead and write your opinion in the chat box, please. So
we can see some responses coming in. Thank you. Let's get a couple more in our roles, in our realm of possibility. What can we do to move the needle? And as we think about it, I just want to point out the significance of the issues beyond policy, beyond even what Ada said earlier on the principles of it. I mean, even if we put in a lens of loss and challenges coming, it's huge. Just the idea that climate change by itself could potentially, according to a WEF 2021 report, wipe out 10 to 18% of global GDP is just indicative of the seriousness of the situation and the urgency. So what can each of us do? I'd love to see some more ideas, and we must continue this discussion.